Where were you on November 11, 2011, over 10 years ago? How have you changed? How have you grown? A prophetic message was released at that time, and now as we emerge into 2023, much that was unseen is now being seen. This presentation is brought to you through the sacred ancestral soul of High Priest Kwatamani, Supreme Soothsayer, Soul Seer, and Spiritual Healer. Author of the highly sought-after text, the prophetic 12,594-year Banu cycle, encoding the consciousness of higher peace through the divine union of masculine and feminine energy, Book 1. First edition release date, November 11, 2011. 11/11/11. And as this prophetic cycle continues to unwind, it is beyond a shadow of a doubt time to align.
This message is dedicated to forwarding the divine socio-economic family community order of the divine children of the sun and the sacred garden culture from which we come as green earth solar conscious beings.
This lecture presentation was forwarded by High Priest Kwatamani on December 22, 2022. Selected passages from Banu Book 1, released on November 11, 2011, will be read by Senior Priestess Kwananamu Kwatamani.
As we observe the close of this 12,594-year Banu cycle, what has been clearly exposed is the spiritual war of self versus soul, where in fact, by its nature, self diametrically opposed the holistic living communal nature of soul. Spiritual war, self versus soul. This is to all of those seeking to be whole. Please do not miss the end code. Let truth be told. The objective of self is to conquer and dismember your soul, never again to be remembered, a sorry and telling retold. Time for the set deified nature of self to be exposed. The truth seekers saw the flaw when do as thy will became the whole of the law. After separation, conquest, and division produced a clash course collision of race, sex, and religion. Domination, control, and rule became the ultimate decision of those with tunnel vision, those who plot and scheme and connive to revive divine order through self-deified lies. Yet in the midst of this self-glorified demise, the time has come for the divine children of the sun to rise, and it will not be televised. No magical pill to seal the deal, no last-minute prayer or appeal, no osmosis. Let's be real. We're talking detoxing and purging to heal.
We will proceed with an even more intense focus on reconnecting and bringing the bits and pieces and parts of the prophetic puzzle back together in a unified whole so that we can decode the seen and unseen messages of sacred ancestral prophecy.
What does this mean in real terms, and how did such a diametrically opposing nature come to be within and among the sacred ancestral presence of humanity? There's a story that was told, a story about Asar, Set, about Nebuchadnezzar, and another son, a brother to Asar, called Set, Sutek. Now, the reality is Asar actually had an identification that has stayed with us until this day, regardless of the various ways and means that have been applied to wipe that out of our consciousness. Asar was known as the green god of the black land. Now, we have a lot of miscomprehensions in the first place. Asar was said to be the king of ancient Kemet, sent forward from Ethiopia to bring higher peace consciousness upon a land invaded by a population who were out of sync and out of focus with divine order, and as such had learned to consume of flesh and blood and bone and skin, hunt and herd, blood spilled and killed. This is the story of this Benu cycle. The story of this Benu cycle was the falling. Set was said to have ripped and tore his mother's womb, trying to come too soon, out of place, out of space, out of time. The reality is that Set Sutek had an objective. His objective was to separate, to concentrate his energies on the conquest of his brother and eventually the destruction of his brother. Asar was considered the green god of the black land. Set was considered a god of a lower and lesser state of consciousness, or lower, lesser state of being. Within that, Set was considered the god of the foreign lands, the god of storms, the god of war, conflict, confusion, chaos, blood spill, divine order, Asar, disorder, Set. And ever since then, we've been indulging in a war, a spiritual war. Not a war that was accelerated by Asar, but actually accelerated by Set. And one of the things that really made this a profound event is that Set's mate, Nebuchadnezzar, had decided she could not stand his cold, pale, and barren nature. So she rejected Set. And as a result of that rejection, she sought out Asar, and therefore appealed to Set and to Asar to admit her and to allow her as a mate to carry forward his offsprings into the generation next. Now, Set, who was about separation, isolation, about being a monotheistic self, the reality is the word self is clearly an explanation of the lower and lesser god Set. And we have to be clear upon this. So within this spiritual war that manifested, a couple of things came about. One of the things came about is that we didn't quite comprehend in many, many ways a god would be a male and a goddess would be a female, guardian, protector of the nature of energy which he or she consumed. So Set or Setic or self, or even exposed as Satan, actually represented a nature of energy. So there we have two different natures of energy. The energy of divine order, the energy of toxic disorder. And no two opposite energies can occupy the same space at the same time. Therefore, immediately, by its nature, there is the manifestation of spiritual war. Self versus soul. And know for a fact that self, by its nature, diametrically opposed the holistic, living, communal nature of soul. The first genesis of our beginning was actually the story of Asar, Set, Nebuchadnezzar. And that fallen child was actually the story of Set, Sutik, Satan, a jealous God, a God of vengeance, war, greed, lust, and wrath, who loved the smell of burning flesh and a bloodbath sacrifice on his behalf. We have forgotten to look at holistic living truth. We ignore all of the signs and symptoms of self-deification. It's because man, he and she has learned to look for the personal gains of materialism and has disconnected from the holistic living presence of divine communal order. We are by our nature communal. It's only when we're out of sync, out of focus, and out of time with our holistic living nature do we in fact not give full acknowledgement to communal living. This is one of the major things that we have to address at this point in time in our existence. And this spiritual war has been a tearing situation. Man, he and she have become so divided, conquered, separated. You are divided by a nature of not only this new identity that is actually a fraud, the identity of race, when it is clear that there is one mitochondrial mother and that there is a one father expression. And as a result of that, the children who were born out of sync and out of focus, following the out of sync, out of focus, and out of timing vibration of Set, Sutik, actually were caught in a cold, blizzarding situation. And it is not the fault of those children so much as it was the fault of that energy guiding them into toxic disorder, a death-consuming culture, a culture of suffering, grueling misery, aches, and pain, where sexual violation, violence, war, and crime became a whole living experience among a people who were birthed within a nature of green earth solar consciousness in their origin.
There still remain the traces of our presence upon the earth as divine children of the sun before the contaminations of disorder that destabilized the sacred ancestral way of life and brought much suffering. The full cycle would be seen as a path of transition to a greater consciousness so that such an event would never be able to occur again within the existence of the divine children of the sun. The warning would serve to identify the nature of opposition and the consequences that would come as a result of surrendering to an energy that opposes the essence of life and supreme love. In each prophetic message, there was a long-awaited return of the sacred ones who would guide man, he, and she forward into the circle of life. In order to recognize the sacred ancestral return, one must first recognize the divine and original presence of man, he, and she as we first begun.
And this reality is what we have to sort out. Because in this spiritual war, we have many victims of circumstances, and we have many victimizers. And each and every one is going to have to face Maat, karma, have to deal with the holistic living reality of the nature in which he or she consumes. And there is no escape. There is no pure magic way out of it. It has to occur through the process of detoxing and purging to heal in divine order. One has to be able to comprehend this holistic living truth at this particular time and the emergence of a new benevolence. We have to begin to take an honest, wholehearted, sincere look at where we are as we move forward within this 12,594 year Banu cycle that is actually coming to a new Banu. And within this new Banu, whether we want to hear this or not, earth-shifting changes are a requirement. But earth-shifting changes does not happen by osmosis. Many who tell the story will do their best to convince those who listen that it's going to be and then within the hemisphere, or within the atmosphere, or within the solar rotation, within the solar sphere, all of a sudden the energy that's going to change and everybody's going to wake up. Insanity. Toxic, cold-blooded, set-oriented, self-deifying insanity. The reality is we are required to detox and purge, to heal. We are required to go forward within this vibration of divine consumption, fruit of the tree, divine union, man, he and she, biologically going forward to multiply divinity into every offspring and vibration of the generation next through divine socio-economic family community order. No ands, no ifs, no buts about it. And every other thing is a declaration of that being, that self, gaining control to maneuver or to manipulate that soul into being convinced to settle for toxic disorder, a lower and lesser nature. And in that, how many different gods have been declared? It is hundreds, even thousands. Different names of the same lower and lesser nature of energy. Different names, same game.
Sacred ancestral prophecy has been in place long before the prophecies of an end of time, or the predictions of a doomsday, or the return of a savior. The recorded knowledge of man, he and she, that has survived barely begins to touch the reality of the sacred ancestral spirit presence of the divine children of the sun and the sacred garden culture from which we come. We are not limited by a frame of reference that squeezes existence upon the planet to a few thousand years.
And until we can come to the realization that what is actually happening is a master con game is being played on the children of the sun by a nature that diametrically opposes his and her existence as holistic living communal beings. This is a reality that's hard to swallow because so many have become so settled and habits are so hard to break, and they can't seem to come to the reality that until or unless a miraculous occurrence happens, they will follow this pathway eternally. And that pathway is to Isfit. It is to a nature of energy of conflict, confusion, and chaos. And this is what we're seeing right now up on our earth. But the change that is coming will come regardless of whether one has made that oath of declaration to detox, purge, and heal. However, this is addressed to the few of the sacred few who have made that oath of allegiance to detox, purge, and heal, knowing full well that osmosis will not do it. Knowing full well that we're talking about universal order. We're talking about the divinity of the essence of who we be as green earth solar, holistic communal beings.
Please be reminded that this is a spiritual war, and also be reminded that the opposition energy appears to be winning so far. Knowing this to be the reality within our present state and condition upon the earth, know that the nature of opposition and the toxic parallel of its death culture has applied any and every means necessary to flood your memory bank with the most bizarre and utterly sensational delusions and illusions, fantastic mythologies, and downright blatant religious fictions in order to keep you out of sync, out of focus, and out of time with divine spirit conscious thought and reasoning in action.
And if we can comprehend that, there's no way that a war against our spirit, our soul, can be successful when in fact we shut the doors to everything unwhole and unclean and out of sync and out of focus with divine social, economic, family, community order. Race is insanity. We're one being, one people who have become distracted, divided, conquered, and ruled by a nature of energy diametrically opposed to his and her existence, our existence. And you can expect absolutely nothing else from that nature except diametric opposition. So race will become an automatic thing within that construct. There will be all kinds of proclamation, declaration to somehow get one to openly declare that there is a supremacy, a white supremacy, or any other kind that actually continues to keep division, separation, and isolation going. Isolation is a problem that we face in the first place. We are divine children of the sun, the solar spirit, and we must emerge and move quickly back into that. As this 12,594 year Banu cycle continued to accelerate to its logical conclusion into a new Banu. That's right. When we say we're entering the age of Aquarius, we're not talking about someone going and saying, what's your sign? What's this? No, we're talking about the earth, the universal order within our solar sphere that moves and that our ancestors long ago had decked it out in a way so that we can comprehend the various cycles of movement. And that within this 26,000-year-old cycle, 12,594 is simply an element of making it stated very clear that we're in the other half of that, and it is winding down. So the Asarian nature, the nature of higher peace consciousness, Ethiopia, the land of higher peace consciousness, the land of our sacred ancestral presence, which is Mother Earth, and all of its spaces and places thereof, which actually got bent by the various circumstances that happened, must move forward quickly into a united oneness.
The signs of the Great Return and the image of what it will look like are a direct reflection of our sacred ancestral spirit presence as we first emerged upon the scene as divine children of the sun within the sacred garden culture from which we come. That which was in divine order will come again to be.
And we must not play about this. Now, and I'm simply a messenger of the higher peace conscious nature which I consume. Each being is simply a reflection of the nature he or she consumes. So there we have two different natures of energy. The energy of divine order, the energy of toxic disorder. And no two opposite energies can occupy the same space at the same time. Therefore, immediately, by its nature, there is the manifestation of spiritual war. Self versus soul. Our sacred temple is the space and place in which our soul resides. To abuse or misuse that sacred temple is a curse against the soulful essence of who you be. There are so many misuses and abuses. So when it comes to the holistic living maintenance and care of our sacred ancestral body temple, so many woo it, screw it, tattoo it, and even look for artificial and superficial ways to renew it. That's right. When it comes to this holistic living, care, and maintenance of our sacred ancestral body temple, most have already blew it. Therefore, you have youth all over the place, tattooing their bodies, ripping through their skin pores, interrupting their whole biological state of being, interfering with the actual anatomy of their existence for the sake of being accepted into a nature that diametrically opposes his and her existence. It's like we've gone completely insane. And the parents,
They have lost all contact with parenthood. And the vibration of it is this. Those who were conquered have been given an ultimatum to assimilate, integrate, and adopt the ways and means of their conqueror. And if the conqueror is going out the back door fast, quick, and in a hurry, they're going even faster, quicker.
The prophecies of many tribes and clans and cultures and traditions have undergone many translations and interpretations by those who have been contaminated by the thoughts and reasoning of the pale mental mindset. Many have been misled and become confused by the contradictions and have become pacified by the fantasies, illusions, delusions, and dreams perpetuated by a deaf culture of sexual violation, violence, war, and crime. Many disciples and followers of the social, economic, political, and religious orders of the pale mental mindset have attempted to position themselves or position their deity in the role of hero, savior, messiah, and the long-awaited deliverer. However, time is revealing the deeper meaning of these messages and the means to fulfill the sacred promise given by the most supreme, seen and unseen ancestral spirit presence of masculine and feminine energy, that we were never left to do this thing alone.
Do you know who you truly be? Mindset determines one's destiny. Do you know who you truly be? Mindset determines one's destiny. One's destiny. Time to leave the self-defined mind far behind. Far behind. And align with the soul divine. Align with the soul. With the soul divine.
Yeah, just sitting here remembering the text that was done 11-11-11 and all of the energies and experiences that were around us, and I'm remembering a particular statement that seems to have really brought comfort to so many, and that was, we're not left to do this thing alone. It made many feel like that there was some mysterious power that was going to all of a sudden make things happen and change. Now, there's no ands, if, and buts about it. There is the most supreme seen and unseen essence of masculine and feminine energy, he and she. There's absolutely no question about the glory of earth, wind, rain, and sun. The question is, why is humanity always seeking to find ways and means of being irresponsible for their attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs? Many say that they were innocent, they were unaware because they were offsprings, they were children off of parents who had assimilated, integrated, and adopted the ways and means of the invader clans, the invader tribes, the invader social, economic, and political system that dominated their existence. Now obviously that has a lot of truth in it. And most obvious, the fact that until or unless we begin a massive process of detoxing, purging, and healing, that vibration of consciousness that keeps one irresponsible, lazy, a little lackadaisic, always finding ways and means of identifying the next person, the next issue, the next circumstances, where all fingers pointed back at one's own being, one's own self. Let's be clear. We must be clear that no, we are not left to do this thing alone. No ands, no ifs, no buts about it. But the first priority is for we, humanity, to do the thing that we need to do to manifest divine order. And if there are a select group within and among humanity who have decided that they are the benefactors of this toxic parallel, that they are benefactors of the fact that within the toxic parallel, within the nature of toxic disorder, words speak louder than action. And with words speaking louder than action, some of those old statements that I used to hear back in the 60s, in the 50s, the old statements that tell a lie, tell it big, make it bigger than big. And when truth is revealed, populations, beings will become so addicted, so comfortable with the lie, that no matter how much truth is told, they would settle to believe in the lie, because they have actually become comfortable with the ideology of that lie. Now, detoxing and purging and healing is a very serious thing. We must begin with where the problem is. We will continue this particular presentation line, as the senior priestesses and the others have informed that. They've informed that it is an absolute necessity at this time. And even if they are now looking back at the 50s, looking back at the 60s, looking at the 70s, looking at all of the work that went into those earlier times to try to manifest a holistic living consumption pattern and spread it throughout any and every land that the Anna could encounter. From, of course, that place of birth, that place where a portion of my ancestors resided long before the invasion clan, and a portion where the others of my ancestry were captured, enslaved, and brought over to serve the interests of a toxic parallel, a deaf culture, a culture that has no consciousness on the care and maintenance of Mother Earth, a culture that reflects the cold and barren nature of the god Set, Sutek, that cold nature that seeks to be the top dog, that seeks to be the one and only, that seeks to be the master warlord, instead of focusing on the magnificent presence of the Asarian nature, the green god, the god of fertilization, the god of the sacred garden culture presence from which we come, and Set and Nebuhet, the goddesses of comfort and production, the goddesses mothers. Those particular vibrations that within any conscious state we have to realize that all that we bring forward as the masculine, birth from the feminine, will be a manifestation of the energy of masculine energy that has been surged into the feminine nature. So if she has been groomed and conditioned to detoxing, purging, and healing from a toxic nature, we have a chance. We have a great possibility and a chance, because it is indeed the Mother Spirit that will determine our future, just like it is Mother Earth that will determine our future. And Mother Earth is going to take her actions regardless of the mindset, regardless of how pale the mental mindset is. She's going to take her action. Right now, the globe is warming. It is intensifying. No matter what those of foreign mindsets think, Mother Earth is becoming closer in her relationships with, as they would say in ancient Kemetic culture, Father Ra, the sun. And with that being the case, the earth will definitely warm. Those areas that have been raped and torn down, like the mother spirits that have been raped and disregarded and pushed into oblivious nothingness as a consciousness, and so long as we do not address reforestation and continue to feed that ideology of that invader mindset of deforestation, that invader mindset of a god of the desert will remain the focal point. And regardless of how anyone openly declare that they're worshiping God, the almighty and omnipotent, what they will come to realize is they are worshiping the God that opposes the essence of life and supreme love, because it is not simply the words, but rather the actions that must speak louder than words. The actions of planting, the actions of fueling off of the whole life energy, raw living fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. The actions of taking care of Mother Earth and making sure that you keep a green earth solar environmental situation going on around you at every point in time. The actions of taking care of that young daughter and that young son and making sure that they grow into vibrant, spirit conscious beings, souls, preparing for soul to soul relationships with each other, so that we can formulate a
transformation of whole life energy that will carry us through this new cycle. If not, and I guess many do not care. Many do not even seem to be concerned when we talk about Maat and the goddess and the gods and the other energies of presence, which means the energy that you are being guided by. That's what God means. Now, if we disregard that, and as so many do, they really don't care what they do on the scene. As the old saying goes, you only go around once. So since you only go around once, live the life you want to live and the hell away with anybody else. As the old saying goes, if in fact there's hell below, what the heck, we all gonna go. Which is insane, because we don't all have to follow the nature of that toxic parallel. We do not have to remain addicted to those particular attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs that has formulated the toxic parallel. We can submit to a whole life energy and align within divine order. We can align within a divine parallel of thought and reasoning and action. And remembering that action speaks louder than words. And that if we decide to take the actions that's necessary to detox, purge, and heal, true detoxing and purging and healing will manifest, because we have not been left to do this thing alone. We do our part. And Mother Earth, wind, rain, and sun, the universe of the Most High, the most supreme seen and unseen essence of all that we be as man, he, and she, will do their part. And there's no ands, ifs, and buts about it. So really, and in truth, what I would suggest to each and every one of us to know that we have a magnificent history as divine children of the sun. Within that premiere, that first genesis of our existence that has come forward from the ancient Kemetic tellings, and although there were tellings long before that, this is documented. Action, speaking louder than words. And if we can truly, wholeheartedly, and sincerely recognize from which we came up until this point, our parallel of thought and reasoning, even if one was lost in the cold and frozen states of cave dwelling and etc., and consuming of whatever one can or whatever was available for one, mercy can be given simply by taking holistic living actions, taking divine actions, taking the actions of recognizing one's responsibility. What was do not have to be what is. And in order for you to make a change in that, you must address what was that was out of sync, out of focus, and out of line with divine order, and move into a parallel of divine order. This is our solution. No, we were not left to do this thing alone. Yes, we have a divine, natural, and innate duty, obligation, and responsibility to take holistic living actions, very serious, every minute, every moment, every day, and to recognize that we are souls living within a sacred temple, our body, and that's our first alignment of responsibility, to take very good care of the temple which we reside in as a soul. Once you begin to recognize who you be as a soul, a sacred ancestral spirit presence, then you will take your divine, natural, and innate duty, obligations, and responsibility to safeguard, to secure, give the best of mental, physical, and spiritual health and well-being to that body temple which you reside in, because this is your glory. And it matters not the color of one's skin. It matters not any other factors that has been played on you as a con game to keep you locked into a divisive nature of thought and reasoning and action, so that you will remain loyal to a nature that opposes your holistic living existence as a divine child of the sun. We must realign our soul within the supreme circle of life and keep the rotation of whole life energy live, vibrant, and in living color. May the most supreme seen and unseen essence of life let each of you know who you be. Do you know who you are?